like environmental. And it's tasty. So, okay, so.
Fire it up.
Chair.
Let's begin.
Oh, that's right, you're the chair,
I
Jerry.
am. Even though I hardly ever know. Let's go through the
Let's do
final
it now.
review of the LUZO amendments for the town meeting.
Great. Well, thank you. Is everybody clear on what we're doing, what the warrant articles were for the land use ordinance that got voted on? Planning
This is for
board
the next meeting?
Yes,
passed all of them.
don't touch the owl.
So it's the corrections to the regarding the corrections to the land use ordinance regarding public sewer. Little Echo Lake change,
Yep.
setback changed, the individual campsites. The clarification for terms regarding the residential dwelling units. The responsibility for notification,
Just roll them.
the amendments for residential dwelling units and accessory dwelling units that deal with LD 2003, now 30A MRS 4364-A.
Oh, good, a new name.
Yep.
That's for the next meeting.
You can have one.
That's for the warrant
He's not
committee.
opening.
Yeah, that's okay, you can take one.
It's the same articles as we're discussing.
Oh, is it? I thought.
Well, they're all in there.
Yeah, they should all be.
Then actually, the ones the pages of Thank you. stuff we pre-voted on, not in there.
Okay.
I'm scared to be right here with a wire.
I know.
This way the audience can see us.
We have the certificate of occupancy, we have lot access, we have additions and revisions to definitions, and we have amendments to the subdivision ordinance for consistency with 38 MRSA section 4364, which is one of the sections that LD 2003 is. That one, actually had, Kathy actually wrote me today, she was reviewing this for the meeting tonight, said there is a provision there that talks about where you get your, where the HUD data is, how you determine what your median area income is based on HUD numbers for Mount Desert, but it does say the metropolitan area closest to the town. And there is no metropolitan area closest to the town, which I thought we
You put
actually
Hancock, you put Hancock on.
did, and I can't find.
You did put Hancock County on.
But that's not the one that's in there, I don't think, that's what she said.
Huh.
I didn't read it. That one, but then I went through all
Did you
this
look at
stuff.
the amendments that Claire said?
Yeah, I went through all that,
Others?
that's the one that we were both looking at, and then I went through all the stuff that I sent to Claire, and I'm like, well, that, either I messed up or it got lost.
You double fisted? So do we just reference them, the Hancock County on,
I think I'll have to go back tomorrow and just make sure that we're using.
well, it'd be the closest one, right? The
Yeah.
Hancock County, so
Right.
it's not, just because it doesn't specify, it
I
doesn't
think
mean you
you
don't
can't-
use it.
You have to use Hancock.
No, no,
County.
I know, but
Yeah.
it doesn't have to say it to
No,
use it.
I don't think so.
Just the nearest municipal.
Right.
But anyway, we had talked about it being changed. And I'm pretty sure we talked about it at the planning board meeting, but
Well, it did say Hancock County, yeah.
I thought we had
Yeah,
that draft,
I've
so
seen it.
anyway,
You know which article number it is?
it is article number
Oh, and that,
18
In the new one.
in this one, yep.
We gotta leave some of those for the warrant committee.
I'm not gonna take this.
On warrant page 11.
Probably on,
It's on 11 on the new, on the one you've got there. Not all the pages are in this one.
Okay.
yeah, well, it should be in the appendix, so I just have to double check. Anyway, Claire sent this to me. But I believe we have already talked about it, so we'll just try to make that change. Edit. And that's it. Let's see, where were we? We also talked about clarifications to the marine and freshwater structures. and the revisions to the non-conforming section of the land use ordinance dealing with, whose authority it is
Right.
to determine setbacks and the zone change for. Those all were reviewed and voted on by the planning board.
Yep.
And you
And
guys,
we all ran through them the other day. Yep,
yep, and that's it.
2
And
times.
then tonight, I think it's more, the Board of Selectmen have already agreed to put them on the one. And then tonight would be the warrant committee's final, whatever, vote.
recommendation.
We voted on some of it, so
Some of them you did, it looks like at least one of them in there has a,
if it's in the one that they're handing out here, if it's green, we haven't voted on it yet.
there was one in there that was everybody except one person voted for it. I don't remember that.
There, that happens. And they,
Doesn't matter.
it took years to get that in there for the warrant committee to be able to split votes like that. And
Sure.
in theory, the one who voted against it will explain it when it comes to town floor. Or not.
Yep. So the majority of the time tonight, I wanted to spend on brainstorming what we want to work on this year. So we just walked through the end of the prep season for the 2024 town meeting. Now we're going to start looking ahead to 2025. And so let me explain what I think the process should be, because I love to avoid. I'd love to do a better job of not rushing through all of these things like we did this year. And so what I'd like to do is sort of brainstorm the things that we want, that you guys, that we think we want to go over. And then I will take that back once we've done that, and then we can prioritize a little bit today. And then I can plug that into a sort of a work plan for the rest of the year. And we can go over the work plan at the next meeting, along with whatever the first thing is on the list that we're supposed to discuss, if that works with everybody.
When's the comprehensive plan gonna get completely finished being rewritten?
Well, we have to actually start meeting for the conference. We've started the inventory stuff already.
Yeah.
And I'm having a meeting with my staff, probably toward the end of this week to talk about that. But I would suspect but at this point, it probably would not be for 2025.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
And who's on?
Who's on the committee?
Yeah,
I don't have a full list yet.
I am.
I think you guys
you
are.
got, you two
Neil
are
and
right
I
now.
Yeah.
You want it, Ellen? You're on every other committee.
I'm not on it. Maybe I should be on it.
Is Stephanie?
I have no life. Does it meet in the summer?
We're gonna.
Well, I'm gonna be yachting.
Will you be yachting?
I'll be out yachting.
Could we meet on the yacht?
Yes,
Great.
Will the staff be serving food and drinks while meeting on the yacht?
Megan will.
Oh, does she?
No,
does she
she'll be
know
at
that
work.
yet?
She'll be at work.
We haven't set a meeting schedule yet. I would like to, just circle back around on that and then.
Yeah.
Come up
I
with
just
a
wondering
work
on the
plan for the
timing.
comp plan.
If you're both on, I should be on it.
I am a huge fan of this proposal. It has struck me as a relative newbie here that there seemed like a lack of organization that was hurting us. And we know the year, we can grid it out, we can get from Claire what the times are. We can sit with the number of meetings we have. We can develop a calendar that says by this date, we're gonna try to do this, by this date, we're gonna try to do this. We're gonna do all the work on a proposal. Short of having a public hearing, which probably not happen as late as they did this year. But maybe late January or something, and then go through them in a systematic way. I think we really should do that, and I think we could get a lot more done. I sensed from talking to Claire when I was in here voting that she would greatly appreciate it. And I also just think it serves the town better. And the people who are coming to, I was really disturbed that we were holding public hearings on items that we were still amending. I mean, how do people get a prior notice of what's gonna be discussed? If we're still tinkering with it. Are they still gonna be tinkering because it's gonna come from the public? but the board should be on top of it sooner than that. And the other thing is, I
Are
still
you
don't
talking as
know.
a planning board member?
No, I'm talking as this board member.
Because we're not a board, but
It can be advisory group. I still don't know why the subdivision ordinance rewrite got deep sixed. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the fact that that was a fairly big initiative that people were doing a lot of work on. And suddenly at the last minute, it disappeared, and I never got an explanation for why. I don't know who made that decision. I kind of think that this committee ought to be involved on some level in discussing. First of all, find out, as part of this process of developing the timeline, how much time do the lawyers need? Did they discover small problems? Did they discover big problems? Did they simply not have their own time to do this? I mean, what happened? And how can we avoid that kind of thing happening again? That we just waste that energy and have nothing to show for it going forward. So
Maybe
very
nothing
little to
is
show for it.
bad.
I mean, I feel like I know a lot more about subdivisions, which was very little than I usually did before that. So for me personally, it wasn't a total loss, but to me, that's still kind of like, how did that happen?
They got nixed because Andy looked at it and said there was a lot of stuff in it that he didn't understand where it came from and why it was in it.
Okay, so that's part of it, and when developing the schedule, that's part of it, converse with Andy about what time he needs. Going forward about
It's not for
stuff.
lack of sending it to him, I can tell you that right
Okay,
now.
well, then we ought to have a conversation with him about our expectations too. So we can do that, I mean, that board chair should be. able
I
to
mean,
do
I
that.
know we're all busy, but, you
Yeah,
know, it wasn't because they didn't receive it
right,
in time.
right,
so maybe we
What
should
we're
talk
doing.
about next year's plan for what we wanna do.
Yeah.
Instead of what didn't happen this year.
well, I think it informs what we need to do.
I would like to talk about maximum lot size. I think,
Minimum or
oh,
maximum?
maximum. Oh, do you want me to?
Yeah, and you said
So-
you wanna talk about it.
No, I would like that to be on our agenda as what we're gonna do next year and how to preserve that. Because if we want to preserve community and if we want to preserve affordability, well, for whatever that means, then we need to look at maximum lot size in different areas of this town. And the examples I can think of are Sylvan City,
Mhm.
Summit Road, Upper and Lower Dunbar Road. I'm not that familiar with Jordan Pond. I haven't looked at that one that carefully, but,
That's probably the same, that whole area.
Yeah. but what I'm thinking is,
Understand.
those are areas that are, and I'm more familiar with that. I don't know what's going on in Sonesville. And Otter Creek is its own little domain, so, maybe Otter Creek should be in there as well, but I think that if we want to continue to have houses and people rather than McMansions and lawns, we need to work on maximum lot size.
I think Otter Creek is part of that.
Probably like Wall Street.
They're next, yeah.
Yep.
It's already happening up there.
So that would be my top priority.
We have the subdivision rewrite.
What about,
Um,
we talked about looking at the land use map and maybe changing lot sizes there too.
Yeah.
You know, and looking at our zoning map and seeing if that makes sense.
There was, your issue of compatibility, you mentioned, which I think is a good one to talk about.
I think compatibility plays into maximum lot size and the map as well,
Right,
When we had the issue years ago about, scenic vistas,
mhm,
that became a major, the reason that sort of died out is everybody said, what is a scenic vista? How do you qualify it? And this is gonna be the same kind of thing to have to figure out with compatibility. It's an easy term for people to twist and say,
right?
what do you mean by compatible? Kind of like driving movie theaters.
It's a tough one, because what's compatible to you?
Exactly, that's what I mean, it's an individual thing.
right, and the planning board then has to interpret what that means, and it could be a number of main things, and maybe that's not you know, you don't wanna have them be just rubber stampy, but you do want to have some clarifying boundaries about stuff like that.
Mhm.
So the planning board doesn't get to say, well, I think this or that.
There used to be the whole sort of
Especially if it
statement in the
overrides specific-
comprehensive plan
Right,
that said, that had a sort of a description of what was compatible. Well, you know, no changes in the, just no changes in the use of the area, and it got changed, but it was another one that was too vague to be of any use.
More of a value judgment thing.
Yes, that's what it came up as,
right,
and you don't want compatibility to be the same thing.
Right.
right.
So that, I think that by having maximum lot size, you kind of avoid that compatibility. Or
No,
sidestep
no.
it.
That's uses
We,
too.
we watched a lot of it during the Heal Way
Yeah.
conversation. And that was, I felt badly for people struggling with that. What that means and how to apply it,
That was it, yeah.
you know, so. There were other things, of course, every time I've heard, after 2 or 3 times I heard Noel say, we should put this on our to-do list. I'm like, I hope somebody's keeping it. To-do list. Because I should be writing this down. So I guess this is our to-do list.
Yes,
That's what we're working on now.
And we also should ask, as part of this process, maybe ask, does the select board have any sense of a to-do list? Does the planning board have any sense of a to-do list that,
Could you ask the planning board?
sure,
Cause you both are on the planning board.
sure.
Mhm.
Then if everybody had their to-do lists in one place, we could
Do it.
coordinate them. Compatibility.
We talked about this a few months ago and I can't remember where we stood with it. I think, I almost feel like it was gonna be another group's responsibility, but we were talking about solar farms and all that. Was that gonna be move on to someone else or was that
That
our
should be land
responsibility?
use, that should be
so
planning board and
Yeah.
us.
the,
For which firm?
Sustainability
Solar.
Committee
Oh.
has started to talk about the solar ordinance, and I had to coordinate with them
Right,
a little bit. They've been working with the Climate to Thrive on some solar stuff, but we're gonna take over that and write the ordinance. Actually, I already have a draft,
nice.
but it's not ready for prime time.
How far in advance can we have public hearings for things that will go on to the next warrant?
So I think that what we should do is pick a few things over the course of the year that we wanna have. Let's do it and not have a public hearing.
Right.
And let's have a public meeting and say, hey, in August, we're gonna have a public meeting on the solar ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. I'm just picking 2 out of the blue. And then we have a public meeting on it and hopefully people show up. And then we have another one, and maybe we could add a new thing, add an old thing that we haven't talked about. So maybe as part of this work plan, we should periodically pick some time, say 2 or 3 times over the course of the next year, where we're gonna actually have a public meeting to
Early in the year
the
before.
things that we're working on, yes, and then in February, that's when we're gonna have the planning board public meeting, public hearing.
And that's when you have the people come out at the
Yep,
last
so
minute,
that guarantees.
because you
that-
don't get participation in our
Yeah.
meetings.
But
But that's okay, because if we've worked them and got them into a shape that we feel comfortable with, and then just kind of stack them up, and then have the public hearings, you're gonna be a lot better at being able to process that stuff and any changes that.
I mean, I don't
that the
disagree.
public has. I don't think the board should be making.
I don't
changes.
disagree with that, but it's just, we don't get the participation.
Yeah, no,
It's
I know,
like
I know.
Last minute, it's when
My
people
sense is
show
that we
up.
sort of do the work and, well, all right, so get that done, we'll set that in the done pile. Then we're gonna do this one, set that in the done pile, and whether we have, announce the meetings or do that too.
yeah, I don't think it's gonna be like as clean as you want it to be.
Oh, sure, no.
But think
I mean,
we're
that's
gonna- I think we're gonna
aspiration.
have a much more thoughtful work plan so that we can get through things that we wanna get through with full discussion
Right,
with either this committee or this committee and the planning board or whatever, before we get to the time in the year where the planning board is reviewing things, this is the one thing I've been trying to work on for a few years now, not getting to a planning board public hearing. And then having somebody on the planning board say, hey, what about this thing? And then all of a sudden you have to take it off the list.
Yes.
Cause that I don't like.
Well, maybe we should, once we make up a list of our priorities and what we're gonna do with, we should say this is what the group is dealing with this year.
Right.
And not take on other projects and say, this is it.
Well, what he's talking about is, I mean, I don't, there's a specific example, but generally speaking, what he's talking about is we worked in a proposed change, got it all the way to the public hearing, and then a planning board member says,
Yes,
oh, but I have a problem with this.
no, I understood that.
And it
part.
got, and then that got flushed. We
Right.
should be doing that work before that point. There's no problem, I think, with planning board members who are on this, taking responsibility for, at every planning board meeting, saying, if you weren't able to attend the advisory committee, here's the work. And here's where we stand.
But that's why I think if we had
And we could ask Bill to have it be an agenda item.
right, and if we had a list of what those items were and we weren't gonna be adding on and taking things off all the time, it would be easier for them to see what our schedule was.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, again, I think that's gonna be great. And there's still gonna be
Oh, yeah.
things that pop up in
Sure.
January.
Absolutely.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, we cannot wait until, you know,
Year and a half.
May to have this thing resolved. Like, we have to do this now, or else we're so far in advance, like, we just have to be able to respond to those things.
Right, but now what we're doing is everything at that same time as opposed to,
Yeah,
you know. So we get the others, get the work, what we perceive as our work done, then we have the latitude, in theory.
right. And my philosophy is the things that we're going to be working on this year that are a big part of that list are things that are gonna take a long time, a while to get right. Like, we've spent a long time on the subdivision ordinance, but we still need to spend more time on the subdivision. ordinance. We're gonna have, if we even get into compatibility, like that's not a one meeting conversation. I just write something up and everyone,
Sure.
actually, my write-up will probably just be strike through and not write up. But
Right,
I think there's a negotiation that's gonna have to happen there.
right.
If we wanted to add, or at least start the conversation this year of whether or not you wanna do a site plan review ordinance, like there's an education process there that has to happen, like what is that? How is that gonna fit into the existing structure of the ordinance? Those kinds of things. I think that one thing we should be doing from adding stuff to the list is
Go
to
ahead.
review the allowed uses table and make it
Yeah.
like an allowed uses table without the headings. I think that causes confusion.
You mean without like residential or
Yeah.
commercial?
I'm trying to use the iPad now, so I can actually write and type notes, so I could just send them out to everybody, by the way, so if it's a little,
It's very impressive.
if it's clunky at first.
I
it'll get better.
still have a pen.
Yeah, I've had like 15 notebooks on my desk,
Yeah,
and I was like, I just couldn't take it anymore, so I'm like, I gotta try something else.
next you can learn to speak to it.
Yeah, just hit record.
Yeah.
It was great last night watching the closed caption.
It's so good. Yes.
It was very
Watching
helpful.
what?
We had closed caption in the room.
Oh, I did not.
Yeah, only the people in the
You can
room
see it
could
on
see it.
Zoom. You could see it typing as on Zoom.
Did you read it?
I couldn't read it, but I could see it.
It was really, really nice.
Yeah.
Huh, I didn't see it, but I wasn't.
Somebody like me with hearing aids, it's very beneficial.
Yeah.
Well, also, cause the sound's awful.
Mhm.
Yeah, when you're on Zoom, you can't hear what anybody's saying back here, 'cause most people mumble. And
That's why they should come up here to the owl.
I've
Yeah.
suggested that before, but they don't, and some people refuse to, even at town, it's like the
I get
guys,
it, yeah,
the guys at town meeting, them will come down out of the stand saying, "Oh, everybody can hear me."
yeah.
Hello, Darren,
Got car full of food for the mark.
I'll bring it in.
you want me to come and help?
Yeah,
you?
trust us.
Is there a heater on to keep it warm?
It's in the trunk.
You can bring it in, I think we had already talked about you guys setting up while we were finishing this up, so.
Well, how much, are you gonna go till 6?
Well, it depends on Gail.
Approximately.
So right now I have, maximum lot size, subdivision rewrite, we're gonna say, I call it land use map for shoreline zoning, which is essentially, well,
Not just shoreline, it's
Talking about-
overall zoning, because people have talked about, why does a lot have to be 3 acres or 5?
so if, I think we can talk about that. My philosophy is that's conversation needs to happen through the comprehensive plan and then get translated down to a warrant to, this group.
So we're talking years down the road at that point.
That could be, but I don't think that that means we can't go like maximum lot size.
That
You
needs to be-
shouldn't say,
I just know personally, Sylvan City is already starting to change. I mean, that was never, ever, ever a summer
I'm
neighborhood.
gonna go help.
And it is now becoming a more summer neighborhood. There are now at least 4 houses that have transferred into summer families.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think they're gonna now start figuring out how to buy the neighbor's house. And knock them down and build up.
Money talks, right?
Yeah,
yeah, no, I think we could deal with that through here. That's
Yes.
like an implementation question, and I bet there's something in the existing comp plan that would facilitate that change. What I'm suggesting is that if we're gonna go through the whole town and say this, RW5 zone really should be an RW3,
mhm.
then that's not a change that we would wanna make without going through a comp plan.
Are we gonna be able to measure somehow in that magic measuring way? The people that are building an auxiliary building or are taking advantage of what the governor has suggested that we do with density in the bigger, like RW5 zones and 2 zones. We're gonna be able to figure out who's adding that second structure or how many people are adding those second structures. To see if it,
I think we could only track it through the building permit process.
Yeah, that's it.
That's sort of after the fact.
yeah,
Yeah. The other, seriously, I do think it would be worth having a conversation with the town to say, you know, hey, all of these things are happening. And we're giving you, we're working toward creating more density. So in return for that added density, is there, and right now, there are no restrictions to that, just go for it, do whatever you want. I still think it would be a worthwhile conversation to ask, like, should we have some, you know, limit, not limit, it's not even a limit, it's if you're going to do this, then this, you know, like. I don't
It's a
wanna bring
tough-
up the shoreline, the short-term thing, but rather than allow
Exactly.
people to.
If you do more, they're just gonna have more short-term rentals.
Right.
That's really, it's
Isn't
not
that-
helping
isn't
the
that a
housing.
good way, a good way to try to deal with some of the things that we're talking about as well.
No, but you also gotta be careful, we can't take away people's rights.
It's not taking away,
Well, no, I'm just saying,
we do it. every-
government, we're putting our hands and regulating.
Well,
the-
Talk about the Bill of Rights here.
Yeah.
Not because I'm
You
mad,
know.
but because, I mean, I am. But I'm just kidding. No, I mean, again, I'm not trying to get, I don't wanna be super defensive about that, but my argument, everybody said, people say that all the time, but you literally,
Correct.
that we have a whole structure of ordinances that tell people what.
I know, oh, I know, oh, I know.
The question is, how do you wanna do it for the right, what's best for the community?
Correct.
Yeah, but it's a good, I mean,
I
something
think
to consider.
Yeah, I meant split zoning should be addressed too.
Split, yes, that's one.
That's a tough one.
But people like me are slow to catch up. What is split zoning?
It's a lot that's divided by 2 different zoning districts.
Oh, okay.
Would that all go under the zoning map review or a separate?
I don't know.
So,
I'm just running into problems.
Yeah.
I had one at 3 zones, that's fun.
how do you decide?
Well, I get an opinion, it's that if you, like, this particular lot has 3 different zones, it has stream protection, which is associated with shoreline zoning. And then there's conservation, and then there was, I think, residential 1 or 2, I can't remember, and they wanna know if they can have a second dwelling on their property. And because they have a little bit of stream protection up in the corner of their lot, they have to meet the dimensional requirements times 2. And it's like, but it's just, it's complicated when you have split zoning. Like I looked at other towns and some allow, you know, they have split zoning, and you can move the zoning line 100 feet. So that the lot is more in one zone versus the split. And then I read where if one zone in square footage is larger than the other, then that dominates
Right.
the zoning regulation. It's just, I'm just like, you know, does a more restrictive zoning apply? But no, for purposes of calculating the number of dwelling units, but if you're in the separate zones, you gotta meet the, you know, dimensional requirements for setbacks, and, yeah, it's just, and then, it's just, if somebody builds on the zone line, what are you doing?
I'm not quite sure how to categorize it, but I think you've already touched on it, but if we're gonna explore, everybody seems to say, well, we need more workforce housing, we need more workforce housing. What does that mean with the LUZO, beyond what we do by state law? How does the LUZO, how does the size of lots and what the minimum size lots, how does that affect our ability to do that? Because if we're actually going to look at workforce housing and do something meaningful, we're gonna increase the density of dwellings. It's not gonna be just it shouldn't be just in the villages.
Yep, and we're
And
already
so-
getting kickback from people that aren't in the village about not wanting it in their
Correct,
land where they decided to live in the woods,
correct.
In the suburbs.
And that, and
in the
yes,
suburbs.
and that is a problem that we need to grapple with.
We also need to grapple with what term to use, workforce or residential.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's, workforce has negative connotations.
Yeah, I don't like
Oh, it's got a
that
stigma.
terminology at all.
Got a stigma to it.
That's all the bikers in their pickup trucks.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so maybe we just need
You know, they
to,
let their grass grow high and they just, you know, don't take care of the properties and they don't paint the building. I mean, that's just not
Not for
true.
nothing, but
That
if they
is
can
not
afford a
true.
pickup truck, they're probably not workforce.
But that's not
I
true.
agree.
Well, we're not talking about low income subsidized housing here. I mean, that's just like not.
No,
even on
but
the
you
table.
know.
No, but
yeah,
that-
you
but that-
know, that's what happened.
That's what people think of when you say
Yes.
workforce
I know,
housing.
I don't have any problem using different terminology. I'm not,
I was being
certainly
subtle.
wedded to that.
Good.
I don't-
Cause it always,
Affordable.
it raises hackles right away,
It does.
year-round residential, whatever,
Yeah.
affordable,
Year round,
even if it's rental.
Yeah, sure. I have no. great-
Year-round
That's true.
residential,
You're on workforce.
Yeah,
My better half lived up in Farnham's Way, and they were all professionals
yeah.
that were in there.
They were,
I just throw out one.
you can, we're a public hearing and I'm in charge.
During some of those hearings we had about Heal Brain, somebody who's opposed to the project said, if this is workforce housing, what happens when somebody retires?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
Leave the house?
Oh.
So that's why I say, make it year-round housing
Yeah.
as the terminology.
Yes.
so that would also be a change in the zoning tables too. It's called cluster though, right?
The
So,
cluster's a
what-
whole
Cluster's
separate.
different.
I mean, as part of this whole thing, I mean, so I will address the subdivision ordinance, cause I do think we did spend a lot of time on it, and it's too bad that we had to pause, but there's a layers of reasons why we had to do that. And I think that we can make a better subdivision ordinance because we have a little extra time to do that. And go back and really figure out how some of the stuff that we're gonna add to a new version is gonna relate better to the allowed uses table and the dimensional standards in the ordinance and whatnot, because there's things that we wanna keep separate. And things that we wanna, there are certain reasons why the land use ordinance and the subdivision ordinance have different things in them. Like, for example, the road review standards, like we have the road standards in the subdivision ordinance for a really strategic reason. And that is because if it's in the land use ordinance, you cannot modify them. If it's in the subdivision ordinance, then the planning board can modify road standards. And that's a good thing, because it provides some flexibility. But I think there were other reasons why, given also the fact that the town is being sued right now for a subdivision that was recently approved to go and change the subdivision order during that court case probably wouldn't have been a good sign for that. So there's reasons why it got pulled, but I think we have an opportunity to make it a better ordinance. It was pretty good. It was a good start. But my other worry, and I think I said this at one of the meetings right before, was that I think there's a few things in there that people haven't really had a chance to like really understand. And so we want to dive into like, what does it mean to be a cluster subdivision versus what does it mean to be a year-round,
Residential.
community,
Yeah.
A year-round subdivision, or like, could you add, there's income requirements and then there's density. they're like two different, or size of lots really is what cluster.
There haven't been any real cluster houses built, I think,
No,
because that was kind of a pipe dream years ago that that was gonna happen all over the place, and it,
there's been a few, I think, like,
there's the one
Isn't
in,
that what Ripples Hill is supposed
yeah,
to be?
Ripples Hill is a cluster.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's one on, Eagle Lake Road. You know,
Or
they're condos, but they're farms, Acadian farm.
yeah, but I think like when you think about a traditional clustering process, it's really like, let's figure out a way to balance out our desire to preserve more open space.
Yeah.
How does that, the evaluations really need to be more about, depending on where it is, where do you, if you wanna preserve open space in an area like Beach Hill Road, that's great. But if you wanna preserve open space in an area like downtown Northeast Harbor, the village, like maybe you should have a separate evaluation, like, hey, we do an evaluation of what are all the recreational opportunities around you, and then is there anything that's deficient, and should you set aside some money to help, improve one of those things or whatever, there's those kinds of things that could be part of the conversation, so. It should be, I think that's a really interesting thing, and what I like about the idea, and I think what Gail's talking about, is that we could take a pause and say, hey, we've gotten to this point, let's have a public meeting to talk about some of these big ideas that we're talking about in the subdivision ordinance, because people need to weigh in on, that. And what I'm hearing, as part of all the meetings that we've been sitting through, is not, sort of not like you're setting aside the comments on a particular ordinance, it's like, what are we doing about the bigger topic? And I think we're actually are doing things about the bigger topic, but we just haven't had a chance to talk about the things that we're doing on the bigger topic. And that's, I think, is a shame. So we have to, and people need to pay attention to those.
And which is the bigger topic?
Housing in general.
Okay.
Aren't there all kinds of other tools that we should be exploring? Well, yeah, there are, and we are.
But that, I think that gets back to your question about the comprehensive plan too, because I think that's an area where, that's a group where a lot of this. I think the community thinking about that probably should be updated.
Yep.
And
So-
the last one is all about affordable housing.
There's probably a lot in the existing comp plan that we could fall back to, but I guess that's why I'm saying, as we're going through a lot of these things, I continue to think it's a great time for this town to update the comp plan, because the things that we're dealing with are big things.
Mhm.
And that what it should end up trickling down to a committee like this is, yes, we've decided the direction of these big things, and now we're gonna implement that.
Right.
Here's the details on how you do that. That's what your job is
Right.
gonna end up being. That being said, policy doesn't stop while comprehensive plans go on, so there are things that should be happening.
When was the last one, Brandon?
2009.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Was that? Yeah,
after years of working on it.
yeah, but
it's usually a 2-year,
Yeah, I
2-year
think it
commitment, I'd say.
started,
Huh?
it started in
8 what?
2008.
Oh, it did? Yeah, I think it's, where we are right now, it's probably gonna be 18 months.
yeah.
Interesting factoid, the hospital, Gail, I probably told Gail, the hospital is doing their triannual federally required community health needs assessment. They've been surveying people who use MDI hospital as their primary care. So the region of the island, offshore island. And they have about 412 surveys that they got back. And they asked people to rate, how do you think, do you think we're a healthy community? Do you feel safe? Do you feel this? What are your major concerns? And on a health survey, housing was the #1 concern that people had.
Was there a
And
question?
there was more than, like they did 3 years ago, in 2020, and housing grew in importance over that time.
Was there a question that prompted people to answer housing, or I wonder what that, that's pretty interesting how the genesis of that answer, I'd be interested in.
What was it in 2020 as far as number
You can probably
one?
get the
Now that I
survey.
don't know,
Yeah,
right?
Marlo's.
And they haven't published this yet.
Oh, they haven't.
They're doing committees
Yeah,
now, sort of picking out themes, and housing is now a standalone theme for how to address it, come up with some goals and objectives and strategies to get there. Winning the lottery is the top of the list.
One of the things that we're gonna be
Really.
so that the 2024 Housing Summit is next
Friday.
Friday. And one of the things that we're gonna be trying to talk about, well, two different things. One is trying to identify some goals that we can all agree to for housing. And then the other one, which I am actually particularly interested in, is identifying the paradoxes in those goals. Like, how do you achieve that goal? But you have to recognize that there's, you know, I'm still trying to think of a good way to describe it, but like, we want more housing, but we don't wanna cut down any more trees. Is the only thing I can think of.
Or I don't wanna see people from.
But we don't wanna see neighbors. So like, I think, you know, and Planning 365 project is a good example of that too. We want more housing in our downtown, but we don't want more housing in our downtown.
Right.
You know, so it's, in order to really understand how to deal with, the answer is easy. You have to build more housing of different income types and different styles and whatever. The challenge is money, but it's also like we have to identify and really think through those paradoxes that we're having to deal with, because we won't be able to create good policy unless we figure that out.
People
So I
need to
think
be
that's-
willing to reconsider their preconceived notions about.
Right, but I think what I'm starting, you have to recognize that the things that one has to recognize that the things that, like, I believe in certain things, but Joe might have a slightly different perspective on it.
Right.
And in order for us to make progress, we have to find where we can
Correct.
move those things forward.
Do you know if anybody from Mount Desert's got town?
The town government, I have to look through the registration list, so I'll find out. Yeah,
We know Kim's not.
Right.
who is McKay?
Dan,
Dan's gonna be there. He's on the
he's the
economic
chairman of the
development
town
committee.
economic
Yep.
development committee that identified housing as the number one issue.
Yeah, staff. There's also, and we're conflicted with MMA. There's an MMA meeting on Friday the 20, whatever, night also. But, yeah, it's not always the. You know, journalism to come. Yeah, all right, let's get back to the list, because we have a few minutes left. So what I have is, maximum lot size, subdivision rewrite, land use map for shoreline zoning. And other things, solar ordinance, compatibility, section A, 6A, sorry. Potentially density review. Revise the allowed uses table, site plan review ordinance, split zoning, and then how does workforce housing relate to lot size? Terminology. What else? I'm sure Kim and I will sit down at some point and come up with some tweaks that we need to do.
Right, and we have a couple meetings where we can bring ideas in, seems
Yep.
to me.
So what I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna take this list, and my question to you guys is where's the priority? So I could just randomly pick one and start on it, or you could tell me what's the highest priority.
Seems like housing is always in the top of the list.
But as it relates to the things that we just talked about, what would be the priority? We have, maximum lot size.
Maximum lot size. I want that to be the priority.
Do you have any ballpark that you think would be acceptable in there? Cause there's a lot of small lots in there.
I think they're all acceptable.
So I've been thinking about this a little bit, so maybe I'll suggest a structure and then think about it a little bit
Right.
more as a group. My structure would be, let's get the map out.
Yes,
Let's start from where we talked about, which is Sylvan City, the Dunbar Roads,
Yeah.
Otter Creek.
Otter Creek.
And then we can start to say, okay, we'll do an exercise, like as a group, like, all right, here are the lot sizes in these areas. I can actually create maps of some of those other places. So we ought to take a larger map, circle the areas that we want to make sure we do. I'll start with those three. And then if there's additional ones, we can add to it. And then we're gonna zoom into the map and say, okay, what are the lot sizes? We'll have to look at the land use table, see what the zoning is, and go from there. And then I think the challenge is gonna be how to make that work in the framework of the ordinance that we have right now.
Mhm. Plus also, wouldn't your village community meetings kind of play
Yeah, we
into
could,
that also, because you get a lot of feedback, especially in
Mhm.
Seal Harbor.
yes, I mean,
On
we
what they
should,
wanted, I'd take a look at that stuff too,
Yep.
because you had that nice,
yeah, we did some good reports.
yeah, you
Yeah.
did.
That
I
was
was
still,
looking-
it was a good turnout.
It was a great,
We had good
Yeah.
turnouts everywhere, even in Otter Creek, I thought it was a pretty interesting
Yeah.
meeting.
And it was an interesting meeting.
Yeah,
yeah.
no, really, it was.
I didn't
It was
know
great.
that, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
'Cause yeah, that's your community, those are the people that want what they want in their little community. And I
Yeah,
think
but we could take this conversations that we're having here and then kind of follow up even as a joint kind of comp plan, this kind of committees, just start to think about that. I think we can overlap some opportunities there. Yep, all right, so we're gonna start with maximum lot size. I might add the subdivision rewrite to the
Yes.
top, because it's already like,
Yes,
halfway
I
down.
wanna
hopefully,
get,
yes.
get in touch with Andy and like get some things top on his list, and that would be one of them.
And if
Let's
we
just
could,
wrap it up.
if we could take a little bit of time to talk about or develop the structure for the year, so we know, well, how much time do we have to actually talk about maximum lot size, or how, you know, before we, if we chunk out the year on a calendar, then we should be able to tell, how many actual meetings do we have?
Well, we don't usually meet in the summer, because we're all too busy.
Right.
Really,
All right, so that,
but usually July and August or something, like, we don't meet. Right.
okay,
Well, I'm gonna pencil out a schedule. We're gonna go over it in April.
Perfect.
And if it includes some meetings in July and August, that's what I'm gonna put in and we can always cancel.
Good.
Redo it as.
Thank you.
Or you can get enough of us to make it work.
yes,
You
We
just
don't,
don't,
we don't all have to be, some will be yachting, yes, but some will not.
right, and then maybe we have to recognize that the bulk of the work that we're gonna get done isn't really until.
We can fit everybody.
We shouldn't, there's even this list is a lot to try to.
I was
Yes.
gonna say, this is a large list already.
yes,
Well, this all began with this board of selectmen giving us a list.
Yes,
yes.
Yeah, and I think, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we should tell them, once you get it written up, we should tell them what the list is for next year, and get their feedback.
Yeah,
By the
I
way,
think-
we never do this.
if I would request to the planning board reps, like if you might, I'm not sure, I don't need to go to the next planning board meeting, but if you can talk to the
Sure.
planning board members and say, it would be, my thought would be, are there any, elements of the ordinance that we want to try to make it better for the review process?
Right,
Well, applications and checklists are gonna be on
Yep.
their top list,
Yes, well, we're working on that for sure.
but we can put like, check with Bill and then put like under other on the agenda. You know, planning
Right,
board,
right.
discussion.
yeah, yeah,
Or
at this point, we already have the agenda, but it's not. a-
Well, no, I
so
mean,
we can-
yeah, we can just add it, you know, after other, yeah, because Bill always asks anything under other. I
There you
mean,
go.
I think it should be published though, honestly. On the agenda, what is gonna be discussed, and like. add more
Sure, I mean,
people.
going forward. so.
Yeah, yeah,
You just, whatever,
Yeah.
however you guys want to
You
do it.
wanna-
I don't know if I need
you wanna
to
help
get that.
Kathy bring
meeting.
up the info?
You can just tell me what you.
no, I just think that like, they can go back and tell the board these two, you know,
Yeah.
what we discussed at our land use advisory group committee and,
Yeah.
and what we're talking about.
Right, and what I think would be really helpful is like, we have people on different committees here, and like, we should be relying on you guys to go back to your other committee and say, hey, here's what we're working on. You know, like, if we don't have somebody who's on the sustainability committee on this group, we should. Because they're working on.
The same thing.
There's
Right.
ordinance stuff that, you know, then we're not working on things at the same time that are not gonna work together. I use the solar ordinance as a prime example.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there are things that maybe we don't need to do, because somebody else is gonna do it.
Yeah, but they're not the ones that should be writing ordinances.
Not the land use related stuff, but
Yeah.
like, we might have an idea that, hey, this sounds great, let's work on it, but it's not within, it's probably better suited for somebody else. I don't know what that is yet.
I was gonna say, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. What else?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Good.
Move for adjourn.
We can start the next one,
Start the what?
start the next meeting.
Do it.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Anybody
yeah,
adjourn?
16 minutes.
Second, yeah.
Second? third,
Anybody
fourth.
wanna stay longer?
Thank you.
I am staying longer.
I know, but now you're in a new position altogether.